Now, to unpack this for us, we're now joined by Tshepo Kgadima, independent economic energy analyst, and he joins us via our telephone line. Tshepo, thank you so much for joining us this evening here on SABC News. I mean, taking a look at that insert where we know that South Africa is technically working on a framework to deal with the country's transmission development plan. I understand that at least 1,400 kilometers of transmission cables needed over the next 3 years. Maybe just tell us what we know so far about our route to trying to resolve these issues around load shedding.
Greetings to the viewers. The talk and the update by the Minister of Electricity, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, should be seen in the right context, that it is nothing but positive platitudes from a rostrum. The so-called plans are neither appropriate nor are they financially viable. So South Africa, I mean, they believe that over the next 10 years they need to expand the transmission network of the country by 14,000 kilometers. Now, that assumption has not been tested anywhere, and it has completely discounted the fact that South Africa, the future of electricity is off-grid instead of being on-grid. Just in 2023 alone, there was more than 3,000 megawatts of electricity demand that migrated off-grid. By the end of the financial year, March 2024, for Eskom, they would have lost a further 2,000 plus megawatts of demand that would have gone off-grid. And there are several factors that lead to this accelerated migration of electricity demand off-grid. But the key one being the electricity costs, the tariffs which are exorbitant. We know that from April 1, there is another 12.75% electricity tariff increase. And also the system, from a generation point of view, Eskom continues to underperform. Its energy availability factor remains below 55%, and in recent times has largely been around 50%. Now, Eskom requires a minimum of 75% energy availability factor in order to not have to use diesel, to not have to buy in any so-called independent power producer electricity, which comes in at a 6.5 times more cost than the inherent cost of generation by Eskom itself. So that has led to unreliable supply of electricity, but at exorbitantly high costs that consumers have now found it a lot more easier to migrate and go off-grid. So you'll effectively see more commercial as well as residential customers who can pay going off-grid, which in turn leaves Eskom only with industrial customers who are energy-intensive users. And hence I'm saying this country already has got over almost 34,000 kilometers of transmission grid. I can't see how there will be a demand for expansion of that by 14,000 kilometers.
And Tshepo, if I'm understanding you, are you basically saying that, these targets being set out are quite ambitious and not necessary for our country?
Well, they are not financially viable. So as much as Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa says that the feedback they've received from some of the funding institutions, the investors, was that they would be happy to invest in the transmission grid expansion without a sovereign guarantee, I can assure you now it will not happen, for a simple reason that all the independent power producers currently have got a national treasury guarantee. There's therefore going to be no new investors in the electricity system of South Africa who will themselves not demand that they be given a guarantee. But also the figure of 400 billion rand has not been there's no financial engineering that one can refer to. Eskom transmission itself, the head of transmission, they did a transmission review where they projected that by the year 2030, they would have had to spend in the order of 98 billion rand. Now, that figure is now 4 times higher in the same period. So the question becomes, who actually is responsible for planning? So what I suspect we are going to see is another situation similar to what we've seen with Medupi and Kusile, where the cost overruns are 3.5 to 3.5 times more than the original budget estimates. And hence now the minister is talking about 400 billion rand investment in the transmission infrastructure as opposed to the 98 billion rand that Eskom itself has already budgeted for.
And Tshepo, listening to you, one would be quite skeptical from the plans we are hearing from the minister. When you looking at this problem facing South Africa, what in your opinion needs to be prioritized so that we can get to a point in this country where we can say goodbye to load shedding?
Eskom needs to arrest the tariff increases. The increases are not inelastic. They have reached the end point. You can't increase tariffs. From the 1st of April, average households that consume at least 650 kilowatt hours are going to be paying R2.88 a unit. That is when now with off-grid solutions you can generate and have electricity for under R1.60 a unit. So customers are going to vote with their wallets. So the appropriate strategy, turnaround strategy for Eskom to pursue will be that of no longer seeking further tariff increases, but most importantly, paying particular attention to the proprietary generation plant or the fleet of power stations that they have, so that they generate at least 30 to 32,000 megawatts of power at any point in time, so that there can be no more load shedding. That means that the energy availability factor needs to improve, but also the energy efficiency factor, which simply means that Eskom needs to get a better efficiency out of the coal that they burn. Currently, their energy efficiency factor is around 29% instead of 33%, which they are calibrated for. It should not surprise us, therefore, that Eskom continues to use more coal, yet generate less electricity because the efficiencies are down. So they need to get back to the basics and ensure that they have got better plant performance, and that better plant performance must be able to give them a higher energy availability factor. And with no load shedding, then their revenues will not decline. But if they continue to demand the exorbitant tariff increases, double digit, as they have been demanding in recent times, unfortunately, we are going to see more and more customers migrating off grid. That spells a disaster. Just the residential customer in this country for Eskom accounts for 44.9% of Eskom's revenue. So that tells you that if 10,000 megawatts of demand migrate off grid, it just simply means that you will have a business here that produces electricity with no customer. Hence, I'm saying that you can't even speak about expanding the transmission grid, because the transmission grid we have now of 34,000 kilometers is sufficient for the power that we are currently generating and for the demand that is there.
All right, then, Tshepo, thank you so much for your time this evening here on SABC News. That is Tshepo Kgadima, independent economic energy analyst. They're just talking to us about the plans which have been laid out by the electricity minister in terms of how to deal with the country's load shedding.